Well, as you might notice, today's not Saturday. Sorry I didn't get a video on Saturday. I am still trying to be accountable. It's just that I got very sick on Saturday, and my week has been very busy up until today, Thursday, my first breather. So, to make up for that, I'm going to make up 2 episodes today because the weekend is going to be very, very busy for me as it is now the Christmas season. I'm still going to try and get episodes out. No promises, but I'm really going to try and not skip next week. So today, you get 2. So, as I said on the last episode about theming, ideally, I make sure that I'm hitting the game's goals and restraints for every single thing I do with it. The mechanics we'll be talking about today, I feel like I only paid attention to the constraints, and not the goals. Big no-no. Now you'll see that I got kind of lucky, in that the creation of these wasn't necessarily counterproductive, but I did come up with some ideas that needed some retooling later on. So the first one we're going to talk about today is random number generation. I always knew that I wanted randomness in this game, because to me, randomness keeps the game interesting. I'm not really interested in deep, intense tactics, at least not the sort of tactical battle that I would ever make. I'm just not good enough at it. And I want opportunities for characters to have heroic moments, and also make mistakes. And I want things to not be certain. I want the drama that comes from that. I also feel that offloads a lot of the brain power from the player and puts it on the system. It means that they don't have to worry about every possible action that they are taking. They don't have to do any sort of mental mathematic acrobatics just to determine what the optimal turn order is. They can just pick an option and hope they roll well. So remembering my constraints of being able to be used while hiking, I brainstormed a lot of different ideas of what I could do for that. I thought of decks of cards and coin flipping. I mean, I came up with a big long list of stuff that doesn't require lateral movement and many small pieces. And eventually what won out amidst all that brainstorming was a Wheel of Fortune style spinner. Now this could be spun at any time with a flick of a finger and would have no worries of pieces getting thrown off a cliff or onto a dirty trailhead. Plus it was just like really fun. I started to consider what the faces of the spinner should be, and I saw that I needed to first evaluate my challenge rating system. How do I know what should be on each side of the spinner, aka like which number, and how it should be presented, if I don't know what those numbers represent in context, and within what level of difficulty? So I realized that without a big, complicated, many-sided, fancy, shiny metal spinning die, we couldn't do any large numbers with any real sort of granularity for the target that the players were trying to hit in order to succeed. Let's say we had about 12 faces for the spinner. I took a look at an average spinner and the amount of retail that we'd have available, of real estate, excuse me, and 12 seemed to be about the magic number between having it big enough to call attention to things, but also small enough that we could get enough stuff in. So that meant the absolute max challenge rating that anything could ever have would be 12, assuming I started at 0 and moved my way up in 1 number increments up to 12, essentially creating a 12-sided dice. Wanting to keep things simple, I also wanted to amp up the drama. The possibility for negative numbers had to exist as well. So that cut down, if I assumed a 50-50 split between positive and negative, that the highest number they could ever roll would be a 6. And then if we wanted to repeat faces, which I did, that brought it down to, I guess, around 3 would be the highest. So that gave us a really nice bell curve, with outliers giving particularly great or particularly bad results. That being said, I knew that I also wanted the game to feature competent characters, who succeeded more often than not. So that put the balance further in the positive, with a few neutral plus zeros taking the place of some of those negatives. So I mean, we had a lot of positives, more plus zeros, and then a couple of negatives. So I downloaded a spinner app that let me customize the faces and played around with the numbers a bit until I felt like I had achieved those goals. The next step was character creation. And when I started digging into this, I took a lot of inspiration from games like Dungeon World. I mean, I bought a ton of indie RPGs and just started pouring over them. I mean, I even did trial runs of this with my wife of Dungeon World's character creation to see how she handled it. And it turned out that it worked really well for her, as she usually wants some sort of prompt or choice to determine her character, because creation is the least interesting part of the game for her. And when given infinite possibilities like in Fate, it just results in this crippling inability to decide, and one of the most poignant displays of Hicks' Law I have ever seen. Now, for those of you who are unaware of what I just said, who don't know what that means, Hicks' Law states that the more choices you have in a system, the longer it takes for someone to make a decision. It sounds like common sense, but has some very powerful implications when you start applying that to real-world situations, such as restaurant's menu design. If you want people to cycle in and out of your restaurant really quickly, don't give them very many options. So Dungeon World's character creation gave us the right kind of structure to help my wife engage her imagination and was fast enough to keep her interest. Having a set of predefined options for any given category was the key to being able to make things fast enough to be enjoyable. I also took inspiration from Tales of Arcana. Tales of Arcana is this fantastic, I think it's kickstarted, but I think it's also available on the website, talesofarcana.com. You should all go take a look because it's great. Where they inflict a mandatory negative trait that you must take advantage of in order to use your abilities more than once per session. That means you use your fireball, that card is flipped. You can no longer use it until you have used every other ability at your disposal, including your negative trait. So combining those ideas, I decided that these characters that my wife would be making would have 3 attributes that give a +3, +2, and a +1, respectively, primary, secondary, and tertiary. These additions would be tacked on with any roll she got. So if she got a +3 on her spinner, and she was using her primary ability, that's a +6. They would also have 1 negative attribute that gave them a -1. Now the idea here was that they would run into situations that the DM, me, would put them in to make them have to use this. But I'm still not entirely sure I'm convinced. It feels a little forced. It doesn't feel like it just settles in at home in the rules. It feels kind of tacked on. I don't know, I'm still thinking about that. Then there would be just a few descriptor options to get the imagination flowing, such as hair type, clothing, demeanor, language that they use, that sort of stuff. Just little sparks to get the idea of a character flowing so that they could get started and then develop the character more fully and in more detail as the game goes on. I felt like this was all enough to try out a playtest to see how the currently established mechanics were working together. I know it's not a lot, but I am a UX designer, and a lot of what we preach is test before you feel you're ready. And this was definitely before I felt I was ready. Even with my loss of sight on the goal, it felt incredible coming up with all of this. I felt so satisfied internally in creating all this new stuff that it brought a smile to my face. Literally, on the outside. And I could not wait to try it all out.